As a child, I remember sitting up in the early morning of a snowy day, watching and waiting to see if I would be one of the lucky few to be out of school for a fabled snow day. Growing up in Ohio, the snow could at times be quite dangerous, and also undeniably beautiful. But that did not matter to my child mind, for the beauty and the danger were never things that I really concerned myself with. Even now as an adult, I do not believe I truly respect the danger and beauty of winter. My car is all-wheel drive, my apartment has good heat, and I can even get a pineapple at the supermarket no matter the season. This has become the reality for billions of people now living in our modern era. But what a few still go through, and what all of our ancestors had to survive, winter is in fact as dangerous as it is beautiful. One of the many aspects of being pagan that I want to share with the world is the appreciation for what is done for us now, and what used to rule the lives of those who came before us.
Currently, I live in Kentucky, a place that does not have very harsh winters, and we very rarely see more than a few inches of snow every single year. So when winter comes around, all I really have to do is switch my AC over to heat and wear a jacket when I go outside. I know this is not true for everyone out there, which is why today I have brought on a guest. Some of you may know him as Soil Shaman or Awaz Initiations, but today I have brought on Matt, who is a heathen and a homesteader who lives in Montana, which often gets feet of snow that last for several months at a time.
Hi, Jacob. I'm Matt Sargent, Instagram Soil Shaman, and the even less active YouTube Awaz Initiations. I am a heathen, and I do live in the mountains in Montana. Back in my younger days, in my 20s, I was just a hardcore ski bum. The homestead dreams maybe started when I met my wife. We found out quickly we couldn't afford to live adult lives as ski bums, so we moved to southern Indiana. That's where I started really learning how to homestead. I'm the type of guy who likes challenges. Ultimately, when we had a daughter, I wanted to give her the opportunities I had as a kid to ski and raft and kayak and enjoy the mountain lifestyle. 5 years that we've been in Montana, I can't say any winter has been like the other winters. Some of them are just brutally cold. Some of them we are buried in snow. The first winter we lived on the mountain, on our mountain homestead, we had several storms that were, 3 feet of snow in 30 hours. Last winter we had barely any snow, but it was just brutally cold. So there's definitely different challenges for all of them, but they all require the same level of preparedness as far as having fuel and food and being ready to travel in the snow.
One of my objectives in this video is to open your eyes to how much our lives differ than that of even our great-grandparents, so that we may have a deeper appreciation for the lives we live now. For instance, did you know that the concept of central heating did not exist in the average home until the 1950s? And even today, millions of people still heat their home with wood throughout the whole season. Or the fact that the average 1,000 square foot home requires 4 cords of wood to heat it throughout the winter. That's on average. This can change based on the size and the severity of the winter. And for those of you who don't know, a cord of wood is an 8-foot by 4-foot stack of wood that can weigh around 5,000 pounds. I have nothing but respect for those who can still put the effort to heat their homes this way now, but I also cannot fathom that at one point this was the reality for nearly every single person living through the winter less than 100 years ago.
I didn't mention it. If you follow me, you already know this, but I do live off-grid. So for me, fuel, firewood is pretty important. I do have propane backup, but when I'm out of propane, the propane truck isn't coming up to my house until about June when the road dries out. So collecting fuel is how I should spend the better part of most of my summers. Depending on other projects I've had, I recently built a house for my in-laws on our property. I've been better or worse at that. This summer I did a really good job. Knock on wood, we should have enough firewood to fuel both houses for the winter, and that looks like about 9 cords of wood.
Not only does heat play a factor into surviving winter, but having enough food to make it through 3 to 5 months of cold was something that once was on the minds of every one of our ancestors. The majority of people now get their food from a grocery store, but the modern grocery store didn't come into existence until the 1960s. Before this, small local markets were the only way to get food that was not already produced by yourself.
Before the modern grocery store, it was common to have a year's worth of food in your house because you might have the small county store, but they didn't have a great selection of food. You never knew what they were going to have. And so you were self-dependent. And so as children, you would learn how to can and preserve food, both boys and girls. If you were to, say, move to Montana, which would be a great idea because Montana's awesome, and you wanted to homestead, well, the goal might be to be 100% self-sufficient. You have to realize that that's a 10, 15-year goal. You know, in your first summer, you're going to learn how to grow 3 different crops.
Now, of course, my winter preparations are quite different than someone that lives on a farm or owns their own land. The winter doesn't affect me as much. Now, it does affect me in some way. Yes, I live in an apartment. Yes, I just switched my air conditioning over to heat, and that's about it as far as the survival aspect. But I am an avid hiker, and I do tend to take 1 to 2 hikes every single week, and winter does affect that. Now, I do enjoy it more. Don't get me wrong. I love hiking in winter more. No heat, no bugs, no snakes. And usually it's pretty quiet out here and there's like no other hikers and I absolutely love it. But the thing that affects me the most is the fact that the sun goes down so early. Right now, as I'm filming this, it is noon. Noon. So normally, you know, summertime, if it was noon, it'd be bright out. You still have 8, 9 more hours of hiking. Right now, I have about 4 more hours of hiking, 5 more hours of hiking, and it's not even like to the winter solstice yet. So by the time it gets to the darkest part of the year, I only will have a few good hours every single day to do a hike. And so if I want to do something longer, I need to get up even earlier, which means it's even colder. So I have to bundle up more, bring more layers, and prepare more. If winter can affect the lives of us today in the modern world, imagine what it would have been like in the past before electricity, before modern conveniences. I mean, really in the era before the 1900s, when almost every single person on the planet was living in a way that was to prepare for winter and to prepare for the fact that you might not make it, which is a crazy thought, which is one of the reasons I believe holidays are the way they are as far as winter traditions.
I will be exploring in depth the traditions of Yule celebrations in an upcoming video, but for now, I would like to touch on the spiritual connection humankind has had with winter throughout our history. In many cultural groups around the world, winter represents the time to reflect on the home and the people within it. Not only from a survival standpoint, but also a spiritual one. Gift giving during this time of year appears to be a near universal human tradition, as well as the love for feast and family gatherings. This is a season of thanks and gratitude for what we have accomplished in the past year, but also the time where we look forward and plan for the coming cycle. We are lucky to have such distractions as Netflix or video games during these darker months. Only a few generations before us had to occupy this time with other hobbies, maybe woodworking or knitting or reading or just sitting there. This was also the time to discuss making plans for the coming year with your friends and your family. As I have mentioned in past videos, this is also the time of year that concepts such as hygge grow in popularity, and I believe it is easy to see why something like hygge that promotes warmth, comfort, and togetherness developed in the Scandinavian countries. Just the other day, I was talking about this episode that we're doing right now with winter preparations and things like that. I was at like the Apple store, and I was kind of stuck in line waiting, and I had like the Apple person, and they were clearly they were in college, they were very new age, and they were asking what I did for a living. I'm like, well, I make videos. And they're like, oh, what kind of videos you make? And I just started with this one. I'm like, well, I'm just trying to raise awareness for what is done for us now and what we don't have to do like anything like our ancestors did, even and our great-grandparents. Like our great-grandparents, our grandparents may have had to go through these things. And they're like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. I was like, did you ever think about the fact that, you can go get a pineapple right now at Whole Foods across the street? And like, this is like an unbelievable. Like, there are so many factors into that pineapple being available to you in winter now. It's obscene. And they were like, their mind was blown just by the simple fact that they could get a pineapple right now.
Really, for our grandparents, most likely, if not our great-grandparents, eating a pineapple once a year was like an amazing treat.
If you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. And if you want to have a direct impact on my ability to make this style of video, head over to Patreon and support what I'm doing every month. You'll get access to our community Discord, exclusive live streams, and even early access videos. I will also post the full interview with Matt on Patreon as well. Thank you for choosing to support this channel in whatever way you can.
How cool is it that the first time I come out to film about winter this year, and there's ice forming everywhere? I love it. The taste of winter.
If you are wanting to deepen your connection to the seasonal changes, I do have a form of meditation or a ritual, or whatever you want to call it, that I would love to share with you. Every seasonal change, I will find a body of water, whether it's a stream, a river, a lake, or the ocean, and I will walk barefoot in that water. While doing this, I will call out to the spirits of the land and reflect on the season that has passed, and share my wishes for the season moving forward. Winter is often the hardest season for this, as the water is not very pleasant to be in, but I believe this unpleasant cold is a great reminder for the power of the winter months, and a reminder that we should be grateful for the world that we live in now. In the video that I'm showing you right now, I found this little stream, ice was growing all around it, and I just took off my shoes and my socks, and I waded out into the water. I didn't last very long at first, but after I warmed up, I went back in the water, and for about 20 or 30 minutes, I just spoke to nature. I highly recommend bringing a small offering with you when you do this. For me, in this video that you're watching right now, I brought a small apple with me, and I gave it to the stream right before I did this meditation. It may seem silly at first, but honestly, connecting with the spirits in this way has been one of my favorite seasonal traditions that I have brought into my life.
One of the first books that got me interested in Northern spiritualities was written in about the 1800s. I honestly can't remember the name of it because I read it in the library at the university I attended. What it was an analysis of the Nordic and Greek deities and the cultures and the region and how all those things influenced the development of these gods. So when looking at Greek mythology, this book argued that the Greek deities were birthed out of a place of wine, abundance, and war, and that you can see those things within those deities. And then with the Nordic and Germanic deities, you see them birthed out of a place of cold, harsh climates, of long winters, darkness, but also places that featured beauty like the fjords of Norway or the Northern Lights. And so the Nordic and Germanic deities reflected these aspects as well. So yes, the gods of the north can be harsh and imposing, much like the landscapes they came from. They can be as dark and cold as a winter, but also these deities can be like the warmth of a fire during those cold and dark winter nights. Now, this time of year, what deities do I connect more with? I'm sure many people would say Skadi or Uller, or perhaps Odin. But for me, I have always connected more with land spirits this time of year. I don't know why, you would think their energy would feel more dormant. But for me, it doesn't. Maybe it's because there's less people out and about. Maybe it's because there's more privacy between me and the waterfalls. But I've always felt connected to the land spirits this time of year. And also the ancestors. So again, I feel connected to the gods, of course, but something about the cold connects me to the north. And if you look back in the past as far as like what they did in the pre-Christian era, this is where we have the Alpha Bloat, which is an ancestor type ritual, and then you had Disa Bloat, the Disir Bloat, which was a female ancestor ritual. So it does seem like that, the ancestors, the human ancestors have always felt some kind of connection to the dead, to those who have already gone this time of year, or as the days turn more into night. I mean, look at Halloween, Day of the Dead. There are countless examples of local traditions saying that this time of year is the time for the dead.
I would say definitely my first 2 years living up on the mountain, I felt a lot of Skadi energy, and I felt like she was testing me to be on her mountain, so to speak. Her energy is fairly prevalent on the mountain year round, but I mentioned the winter where we had multiple 3-foot storms. That just made everything brutal. We were getting stuck, vehicles were getting stuck, breaking down, sliding off the road. I felt like I was being tested. I'm not the pagan that's like, oh yeah, I feel more connected to so-and-so in the winter versus summer versus spring. I'm generally like, just shut up and leave me alone sometimes to a lot of the spirits and gods. That might just be who I am. The ones that are always there for me. You'd think like, oh, I probably wouldn't hear from Freyr much in the winter. he's hounding me nonstop year round, as much as during the growing season as during the winter. So, and I love the attention. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like I'm jaded or like, please leave me alone. There are times where I just want to hear my own thoughts, though.
Winter affects us all differently. Some still heat their homes with wood they have collected throughout the year. Others simply switch the AC over to heat, all while children only focus on whether or not they will need to go to school that day. What I really hope this video has left you with is that no matter how winter affects you, I believe we should all take a step back and appreciate what our ancestors had to go through to get us here. For one to truly appreciate the beauty of a summer day, one first must sit out in the dark of a snowy night and feel the cold breath from the spirits of winter.